Close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember the distinct smell of wet asphalt after a warm summer rain, the sound of glass bottles clinking in a woven string bag, and the comforting ticking of the old mechanical clock in your childhood kitchen. Welcome back to a time when our world was entirely different. Today we are taking a deep, nostalgic dive into the 1970s and 1980s. We are going to explore 20 completely normal, everyday things from our past that are absolutely banned, illegal, or considered dangerously absurd today. From the way we drank water on the street to the intense way we treated our winter illnesses, you will be shocked at how much the world has changed around us. Make sure to stay with me until the very end of the video, where we will uncover the most heartwarming and surprisingly vulnerable ritual of our childhood that will surely bring a tear of joy to your eye. Time flowed entirely differently back in the 1970s and 1980s. There was no frantic rushing, no constant buzzing of smartphones in our pockets demanding immediate attention. Instead, there was the pure, unhurried joy of receiving a handwritten letter in the mail, or the quiet patience of waiting for a phone call at the cold street booth. Many modern critics like to say that we lived poorer lives back then because we lacked today's endless technological conveniences. But they are profoundly wrong. While our pockets might not have been full of expensive gadgets, our lives were immeasurably richer in genuine human connection, sincerity, and trust. We knew the names of all our neighbors. We raised our children together in the open courtyards, and we experienced a world that was raw, real, and unfiltered. Today, we will explore a time when life required more physical effort, but rewarded us with a profound sense of community that modern technology can never replace. Let us travel back to a hot summer day in the city, where bright red metal vending machines stood proudly on the street corners. For just 3 kopecks, you could buy a glass of sparkling water with sweet pear or tarragon syrup. But the true magic, and what seems absolutely impossible and terrifying to modern people, was the single-faceted glass standing on the small metal tray. The entire neighborhood drank from that exact same glass. Factory workers with rough hands, school children running home, and elderly pensioners all shared it without a second thought. You would simply place the glass upside down on the metal washer, press down firmly, and a brief spray of cold tap water would rinse the inside. That was the entirety of our sanitation protocol. Nobody carried antibacterial wipes or hand sanitizers, and miraculously, nobody worried about catching terrible diseases. This was not just about quenching your thirst. It was a profound symbol of absolute social trust. We felt like we were all part of one massive family, living in a society where sharing was as natural as taking a breath. Today, sanitary inspectors would shut this down immediately. The very idea of hundreds of strangers putting their lips to the same untreated glass makes people today shudder in horror. But for us, that heavy glass holds the incredibly sweet taste of a carefree youth, a time when we trusted our neighbors completely and feared nothing in the world. The construction boom of the 1970s transformed our cities, turning every neighborhood into an adventure playground. Massive panel buildings were rising everywhere, and fences around these sites were treated as mere suggestions rather than strict rules. Children would easily sneak past the concrete barriers to climb mountains of sand. But the ultimate prize was finding a solid block of black construction tar, which was meant for waterproofing roofs. We would find a heavy brick and smash the block into smaller, bite-sized pieces. Then we would chew this hard, incredibly bitter black mass, as if it were sweet bubble gum. It took a long time to soften, and it turned our teeth completely black. It tasted strongly of petroleum, dust, and pure childhood rebellion. Today, this substance is rightfully considered toxic waste, packed with heavy metals and dangerous chemicals. Modern parents would probably call an ambulance if they saw their child chewing on industrial roofing materials. But back then, it was completely free entertainment that united the kids in the courtyard. We shared pieces of this strange black gum, comparing whose piece was softer. It is a completely absurd and dangerous practice by today's standards, yet we all survived it with a smile. Let us remember the heavy metal key with a large round head that opened our apartment door. For millions of children, this key was a constant companion, hanging securely on a simple string or an old shoelace right around our necks. We would run around the dusty yard all day, playing hide and seek, while the key rhythmically banged against our chests. If we did not wear it, we simply left it right under the thin, worn-out rubber doormat in the stairwell. Sometimes we would even stick it into a small gap in the wooden door frame for our parents to find. We had no heavy steel security doors, just simple wooden ones wrapped in dark imitation leather. The threat of burglary felt distant and almost unreal. Today, multiple heavy locks, security cameras, and complex electronic alarms are the standard norm for every city apartment. Leaving a house key out in the open for anyone to see is considered an act of sheer madness. But back in those days, it was an era of truly open doors. We lived with a sense of collective security, knowing that our neighbors were always looking out for each other. When autumn arrived, the harvest season brought a unique tradition that is entirely illegal today. Collective farms urgently needed help with gathering potatoes or cabbage from the vast, muddy fields. University students, engineers, and factory workers were gathered and loaded directly into the back of large, open, green cargo trucks. We sat shoulder to shoulder on rough, temporary wooden planks placed across the metal bed. The cold autumn wind would blow fiercely in our faces as the truck bounced aggressively over the unpaved dirt roads. Someone would always bring an acoustic guitar, and we would sing folk songs together to stay warm. There were absolutely no seatbelts, no enclosed passenger cabins, and no safety protocols whatsoever. Today, highway police would immediately arrest the driver and impound the vehicle for such a massive safety violation. Transporting people in the back of an open cargo truck is strictly prohibited everywhere. But for us, those bumpy, freezing rides were filled with genuine romance and a strong sense of shared civic duty. We were young, we were together, and the smell of autumn dust mixed with exhaust fumes remains a surprisingly warm memory. Getting a bad cough during the harsh winter meant facing a medical ritual that was both feared and respected in every household. Our mothers would bring out small, square paper packets filled with dry mustard powder. They would soak these yellow squares in a bowl of warm water. Instantly, the sharp, pungent smell of wet mustard would hit your nose, making your eyes water. Then, they would slap these wet plasters directly onto your bare back and cover you with a heavy, scratchy woolen blanket. The burning sensation started slowly, but grew stronger and more intense with every passing minute. We endured the pain bravely because we truly believed it was pulling the sickness out of our lungs. The next morning, our backs would be covered in bright red, perfectly rectangular marks. Today, modern pediatricians consider this practice not only entirely ineffective, but also extremely dangerous, as it can easily cause severe chemical burns on sensitive skin. It is a medical tradition that has been practically banned from modern treatment plans. Yet, looking back, That intense heat was also a physical manifestation of a mother's profound care and love. A trip to the local neighborhood clinic always featured a soundtrack of clinking metal and the distinct smell of ozone and boiling water. The nurse would open a terrifying metal box called a sterilizer, using long metal forceps to pull out a thick glass cylinder and a surprisingly dull, heavy metal needle. She would assemble this reusable glass syringe right in front of your eyes. The sight of that massive glass instrument being filled with medicine was completely normal for us, even if it made our hearts beat faster. Today, the strict regulations regarding single-use plastics and blood-borne pathogens make this practice seem like a barbaric relic of the deep past. The risk of cross-contamination would cause a modern health inspector to immediately shut the hospital down. But back then, this was the foundation of our universal healthcare system. We trusted the boiling water to make everything perfectly clean and safe. Those heavy glass syringes symbolize an era before disposable convenience took over the world. A time when things were built to last forever, even in medicine. Sunday mornings in our small apartments always smelled intensely of damp cotton and strong alkaline soap. There were no automatic washing machines to do the hard work for us. Instead, a gigantic, heavy aluminum pot would be placed over 2 burners on the kitchen gas stove. Bed linens and white shirts were left to bubble furiously in boiling water, mixed with hand-grated dark brown laundry soap and harsh, liquid bleach. Our mothers would stand over this steaming cauldron, stirring the heavy, wet mass with giant wooden tongs. The kitchen turned into a hot, humid, and dangerous steam room. Today, doing this in a modern kitchen would be considered a tremendous fire and severe burn hazard. Fire safety protocols and modern conveniences have completely eliminated this exhausting weekend ritual. It was incredibly hard physical labor, masked as a simple household chore, but that unique smell of extreme, boiling cleanliness is something you can never get from a modern washing machine. It was a ritual of care that required real sweat and dedication to keep the family looking neat and proud. Waking up early on a weekend often meant being sent to catch the fresh milk delivery before it sold out. A large, bright yellow metal barrel on wheels would park right on the street corner. We would stand patiently in a long line, holding our personal enameled metal cans. When your turn came, the saleswoman in a white apron would lift the heavy metal lid of the barrel. She used a long-handled measuring scoop to pour the freezing, cold, frothy milk directly into your open container. It smelled exactly like summer and distant green pastures. We had to walk home very carefully so the milk would not splash onto our shoes. Today, sanitary norms and strict health department regulations absolutely forbid selling raw dairy from an open street barrel into a customer's unsterilized personal container. Everything must be sealed in sterile plastic at the factory. But we drank that fresh, unpasteurized milk without any fear of bacteria. It was a time when the connection between the village and the city felt immediate, and the taste of that morning milk remains unmatched by anything sold today. One of our proudest duties at school was the organized collection of scrap metal and waste paper. Whole classes of children would wander through the neighborhoods, boldly checking dark basements and dangerous construction sites for anything valuable. We would drag rusted, incredibly heavy cast-iron pipes, broken radiators, and discarded car parts across the rough asphalt. We competed fiercely with other classes to see who could build the biggest mountain of metal in the schoolyard. Children were doing incredibly heavy, dangerous manual labor without any safety gloves, steel-toed boots, or strict adult supervision. We roamed freely and handled sharp, rusty objects with our bare hands. Today, this is an unthinkable violation of strict child labor laws and basic safety regulations. A school organizing such an event now would face severe legal consequences. But for us, it was a thrilling adventure and a lesson in teamwork. We genuinely believed we were helping our country build new tractors and spaceships, learning the value of hard work and collective responsibility. Evening entertainment was often interrupted by sudden darkness when an electrical fuse blew in the apartment. The television would die instantly. Our fathers would take a flashlight and march out to the electrical panel on the dark staircase. Instead of buying a new ceramic fuse, they would take the burned-out one and wrap a thin piece of raw copper wire around the metal contacts to restore the electrical circuit. We affectionately called this dangerous little wire a bug. It completely bypassed all built-in safety mechanisms designed to prevent short circuits. We gladly risked starting electrical fires just to keep the lights on and finish watching our favorite evening movie. Today, any certified electrician or fire inspector would be absolutely horrified by this practice. They would heavily fine you for creating such a massive fire hazard in a residential building. But back then, finding a replacement fuse was difficult, and self-reliance was our greatest skill. We trusted our fathers to fix anything with just a pair of pliers and a spare piece of wire. To a modern teenager, the sheer absurdity of this next ritual cannot be overstated. A simple plastic bag featuring a bright, colorful foreign logo was considered a rare and valuable status symbol. When this precious bag inevitably got dirty from daily use, we absolutely did not throw it away. Instead, we washed it gently with soap under the warm water in the bathroom sink. Afterward, we would carefully hang it upside down on the clothesline over the bathtub, securing it with wooden pegs to dry. We used these bags for months, repairing them with sticky tape until the beautiful pictures faded completely into nothing. Today, plastic bags are treated as worthless garbage, heavily criticized as an environmental disaster. Washing them seems like an eccentric joke from a time of extreme poverty. But for us, it was an exercise in basic thriftiness and deep respect for the things we owned. We lived in a world where nothing was disposable and every object had real value. It taught us to appreciate what we had, a lesson that is deeply missing in today's culture of endless consumption. A childhood in the 1970s was filled with unregulated physics and chemistry experiments that took place right in the courtyard. Boys would buy entire boxes of wooden matches just to painstakingly scrape off the red sulfur heads. We would carefully stuff this highly flammable powder between two heavy metal bolts, twisting a nut tightly in the middle to hold it all together. To make it fall perfectly straight, we would tie a piece of a plastic bag to it as a makeshift parachute. Then, we would throw this heavy device high into the air over the concrete pavement. When it hit the ground, it produced a loud, deafening crack that echoed through the entire neighborhood. We were essentially making our own rudimentary explosives out of basic hardware supplies. Today, this activity is strictly classified as the dangerous and illegal manufacturing of pyrotechnics. The police would undoubtedly be called to investigate the noise. But our childhood was largely unsupervised, giving us the freedom to test the boundaries of danger and science, forging our bravery in the most unconventional ways. The atmosphere of our youth was permanently colored by a pervasive blue haze and the strong smell of cheap, unfiltered tobacco. Smoking was considered an unquestioned fundamental right for adults. People smoked freely in their offices while working, in the narrow corridors of long-distance trains, and even inside the closed cabins of passenger airplanes. If you look at vintage aircraft seats, you will remember the small metal ashtrays built directly into the armrests. The thick cloud of smoke hung heavy everywhere, from crowded restaurants to hospital waiting rooms. There was a completely different societal attitude towards health, comfort, and public space. Today, smoking in enclosed public spaces, especially on airplanes and trains, is completely illegal and unthinkable in almost every country. The strict bans protect non-smokers from secondhand smoke. Yet, looking back at those smoky train rides, one cannot help but remember the deep philosophical conversations that always took place over a shared cigarette and a hot glass of tea in the middle of the night. There was a profound sense of freedom associated with the massive railway network of our country. If you wanted to travel, you simply went to the station and bought a small, thick cardboard ticket to another city. You just stated your desired destination, paid a few rubles, and walked away. There was absolutely no need to present a passport, no identification checks, and no complex security screenings at the station. You just boarded the green train anonymously and settled into your compartment. The journey always smelled of roasted chicken and hard-boiled eggs wrapped in old newspapers. Today, strict anti-terrorism laws and comprehensive security protocols make anonymous travel absolutely forbidden. You cannot even enter a modern train station without passing your bags through a metal detector and showing official documents multiple times. We have traded that beautiful, carefree freedom of movement for necessary modern security. But the memory of simply buying a ticket and disappearing into the vast countryside remains a powerful symbol of a simpler time. The melancholy transition into autumn was always marked by a very specific, unforgettable scent in the air. Janitors in blue cotton coats would spend their days sweeping endless oceans of fallen yellow and brown leaves into massive piles. Instead of packing them into plastic bags to be hauled away to a landfill, they simply set them on fire right there in the courtyard. A thick, acrid, yet somehow sweet and cozy white smoke would rise up and envelop the surrounding concrete panel buildings. We kids loved jumping over the smoldering edges of those piles. Today, burning autumn leaves within city limits is strictly prohibited by environmental protection agencies and fire safety regulations. The heavy fines reflect the modern understanding of air pollution and respiratory health. But back then, that smoke was the official perfume of our childhood autumns. It signaled the end of summer and the approaching winter, bringing neighbors together in the courtyard to chat while the leaves slowly turned into gray ash. It was considered completely normal to give a 5- or 6-year-old child a serious mission of great importance. A mother would hand her small child a few coins and send them out alone across several busy streets to the local bakery. We remember walking into the store, greeted by the overwhelming, mouth-watering smell of fresh, warm rye bread. We used the special metal fork tied to a string on the counter to check if the loaves were perfectly soft. Then we proudly carried the warm bread home, almost always biting off the crispy, delicious top corner along the way. Today, letting a small child walk alone through city traffic to handle money and buy groceries is considered extreme parental negligence. Child Protective Services might even be called if a toddler is seen wandering the streets alone. But in our time, it was how we learned independence and responsibility. The streets were considered safe because every adult in the neighborhood kept a watchful eye on all the children, creating a true community of care. Springtime preparations for major holidays usually involved a magical but incredibly toxic substance that we simply called silver paint. It was a homemade mixture of very fine aluminum powder combined with a strong, pungent chemical varnish. We spent hours happily painting wooden fences, graveyard monuments, and rusted bicycle frames, turning everything into a shiny metallic silver. The chemical smell was incredibly harsh and dizzying, lingering in the air and on our skin for days. Absolutely nobody wore protective face masks, safety goggles, or rubber gloves. We inhaled those heavy, toxic fumes deeply without a single thought about our lungs. Today, such highly volatile and toxic chemical mixtures are heavily regulated or completely banned for casual household use due to extreme health risks. But back then, we were surrounded by dangerous materials, living blissfully ignorant of the hazards. That silver shine meant the long winter was finally over, and the city was getting ready for the bright and hopeful days of spring. Every medicine cabinet in our country held a small glass bottle of magical dark purple crystals known as potassium permanganate. We used this powerful chemical for absolutely everything. We dissolved it in water to wash out stomachs during food poisoning, to disinfect deep scrapes on our knees, and even to bathe newborn babies. The water would turn a beautiful, bright pink color. However, a small mistake in the concentration or an undissolved crystal could easily cause severe, painful chemical burns on the skin. It was a highly reactive substance freely available to anyone for pennies. Today, selling these purple crystals is strictly controlled and heavily restricted by the government, as they are now classified as dangerous precursors used in illegal chemistry. You can no longer just buy it casually at the corner pharmacy, but for our mothers and grandmothers, it was the ultimate universal cure for every possible ailment. A vibrant pink symbol of self-reliant home medicine. In our crowded apartments, the open balcony was never designed as a place to drink morning coffee or grow beautiful flowers. It functioned as our strategic survival warehouse. We stored huge, heavy wooden boxes heavily insulated with old winter coats to keep our massive supply of winter potatoes from freezing. Right next to the food, we casually kept highly flammable items like cans of spare gasoline, old paint, broken skis, and dry wood. It was a monumental, combustible mess that we considered absolutely essential for getting through the harsh times. Today, strict fire safety codes and modern housing regulations strictly forbid turning city balconies into such hazardous, flammable storage units. A spark from a neighbor's cigarette could have caused a disaster. But we completely ignored those risks because having a full stock of potatoes and supplies gave us a deep sense of security. Our balconies were a true reflection of a resilient people who always knew they had to be prepared for the worst. When the peak of a hot July day hit the city, we would run around the dusty yard until we were completely exhausted and dehydrated. Instead of going up to our apartments, we would spot a thick black rubber hose left running by the local street cleaner, pouring water onto the hot asphalt. We would simply bend down and drink the freezing cold, slightly rusty tap water directly from the dirty pipe. There was no bottled water, no specialized filters, and absolutely no hesitation. The modern mind immediately panics at the thought of bacteria, heavy metals, and industrial runoff. Today, health officials constantly warn against drinking untreated water from outdoor industrial sources. But the immune system of a child from the 1970s was forged directly in those streets. We did not get sick. We only got stronger. This simple act of drinking from a garden hose remains the most profound symbol of our carefree, unsterilized childhood. We were wildly free, deeply connected to our environment, and blissfully unconcerned with the invisible dangers of the modern world. When we look back at these 20 forgotten things, we realize a profound truth. We do not actually miss the dangerous electrical wires, the heavy glass syringes, or the toxic silver paints. What we truly miss is the feeling of our youth, the slow and steady rhythm of time, and the deep, unbreakable connection we shared with one another. We miss an era when absolute trust was perfectly normal, when doors were open, and when a single glass of sparkling water could unite an entire city. Thank you for taking this warm journey down memory lane with me today. If these memories brought a bright smile to your face, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video to help keep our shared history alive. And now, I want to ask you a question. Which of these 20 things do you remember most vividly? Or is there another banned childhood ritual you would add to this list? Please share your personal stories in the comments below. I would love to read every single one of them.